Fantasy art history with Abelard and Joe. Hey everybody.
Wow, look
Hey.
at what happened to my hair.
Yeah, you look great today.
Good.
What, were you just surprised by something?
I was just doing some a film technique
Oh.
to sync up the audio, which is hopefully it's going to be amazing this time. We're really going to try.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're putting in an effort because we do have a special guest today.
Oh yeah, we do. Is it time to bring him in already?
Come on in, Horace. I actually wanted to ask you guys something. Didn't you
Hello,
guys?
friends.
Hey, Horace.
Hi Horace, how are you
Hi.
doing?
Hi. I'm not bad. How have you both been?
I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm
just,
alright.
Since the other night, still doing okay.
Oh, since we saw the movie.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to
Like a
talk
movie.
about. Should I go see Megalopolis?
I think you should see Megalopolis. You also.
But
You
I
should see Megalopolis.
Everyone,
Oh.
really? That's a big claim to be making, Horace. Are you sure? It's pretty weird.
I think we should face weirdness in our lives in many ways.
What kind of weird in what way? Zardoz weird?
I haven't seen Zardos. Should I see Zardos?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes?
Everyone should. It's great.
I have
It's actually
seen
great.
the costume.
Yeah, Zardos has many pleasures, including that outfit.
Cremaster cycle weird?
You would want it to be, but no, not quite. Although it owes several debts to it.
Okay.
I mean, a million people have used the Chrysler Building in their films, but you put it in there, and I feel like why aren't there a bunch of ribbons coming off of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very Art Deco.
Yeah.
It's
But
a
here's
big pile of images that are splashed all over the screen and chaotically piling over one another in ways that it's hard to really make a lot of sense of, but it doesn't matter terribly because boy is it fun to look at.
Wow.
Well,
Speaking of making sense of a big pile of images, welcome to the show, everybody.
hi.
Horace, you
Hi.
brought your subject matter today. What did you want to talk about?
Yes, actually, an artist who drew me into a couple of fantasy series that I very much liked as a child and still do in many ways. We will be looking at the distinctive Darrell K. Sweet, who probably more than anyone else set the tone of fantasy big epic novel series covers in
Yeah.
the 1970s through the 90s.
I didn't realize this, but my childhood friend loved those Elfstone of Shannara books, and that's a Darrell K. Sweet joint.
Some of them, yes. I think he did some of them, but not all of them.
Yeah. Shall I go get the first one? We can just hop
Yeah,
right
I'd
in.
love to see.
Okay, here.
To get a sense of what kind of sort of general pulp fantasy, big old paperback, volume 1 of 18 we're talking about.
I think this one was just 13.
Oh.
Well, this was number 1, and this was this is the Eye of the World, the first of the Wheel of Time books, and well, it's very it's very classically fantasy suggestive. There's a guy with armor and a couple of swords and a big horse and a lady who's clearly some kind of wizard cleric, and right behind them.
Is
Got-
she small in the books?
Yes, but perhaps not that small.
Oh, okay.
These covers have been ragged on endlessly by people on the internet, but I think it's probably fair to look at what they do well. And when you're 11 and like fantasy novels, 10, 11, and you see this, look at that moon and that creature that looks like a bat, but it's a little too big and humanoid and all these swords and horses and all these people going off on a big adventure. They're going out at night. And look, there's a town behind them, but it's night and they're leaving. They're going off on an adventure after dark, which is even more dangerous than, a Hobbit. They leave first thing in the morning. These people are going out at night. They get serious business.
I love this cover. I think... Also, I love that this is you can tell that this is a book cover. Look at all of that room for the back of the book there. Look at how there's some nice tall trees for the spine so that you can see where all of the text will go. But
Yeah.
it's actually also nice to look at as a painting by itself.
Yeah.
I think this is a really successful composition, although it's ridiculous how small that lady and her horse is.
That is one problem, but it creates a really nice. There's. One, we've got some depth on the left-hand side, but on the right-hand side, this is almost like heraldic, right? We've got horses and people in profile. A horse walking the way I assume no horse ever would, but it's just to kind of show the cool profile of a horse.
Yeah,
Two
well,
horses.
The two horses contrast nicely. The one rearing up, something is probably not also likely to do when they seem to be walking in an unadventurous
Maybe
mode.
it just saw an opossum or
Maybe.
something like
This
that.
is funny because I think we are going to talk a bunch about how one of the places that this artist kind of falls apart is in the drawing people's poses. And as I'm looking this, I'm realizing that the poses of the horses also have this kind of wooden awkwardness
Yeah.
to them. They look like they're on a carousel.
It's not his strength.
No.
I was going to say.
But the sort of like idea of like white horse foreground, lady's light face, then silhouetted against the black armor of the knight behind her, then the black clad knight behind her, he's silhouetted by the white light of the moon. Like, oh, that's so slick. That's great.
Yeah.
It creates this sort of coming at you sort of sequence. It's as soon as you look at it, you can see what's going on, and then if you look at it for a little while longer, you notice that creepy bat up in the corner, and you're like, ooh.
Well, also, they're in front of the largest moon anyone has ever seen.
Yeah.
You could, of course, get that. Maybe that would explain the lack of perspective here. If the painting was done by a guy in a telescope on a hillside several miles away,
Yeah.
the moon would appear huge behind those are land and moraine for people who know the Wheel of Time novels, and presumably Rand behind them with in a Robin Hood getup, which Darrell Sweet very much loves.
Yeah.
The classic Errol Flynn style Robin Hood, green and brown.
Yeah. We'll see more of that
hoods and
shortly.
tunics, yes.
I also really love. Sorry,
Well, I'm-
Abelard. Are you? go
Now,
ahead.
to get the big picture, is there a way that we could see what this looked like as a book cover?
Absolutely.
As if you already knew.
Although, do you want to point out?
Yeah.
Isn't the dark blue and black of the background of this really lovely?
It's very pretty.
And
It's
that one
so,
crooked
like-
tree, two
Yeah.
crooked trees.
Just like letting all of this stuff fade into darkness, something that this artist does not always let himself do. Man, it's so beautiful.
There is a nice sense of mood here.
Okay.
You want
hey,
the lower one.
this one.
Yep. Pow. Nope.
Yay.
Nope.
No, did I make? Oh, oops.
No.
Oh no.
What's
oh
happened?
no. Where did it go?
You still need to click on it.
Ah.
Yeah. How about that?
Sorry,
Smooth
guys.
like butter.
Ooh, we're gonna
Yeah.
get it right someday. So this is what it looked like on the book cover.
In a bookstore catalog when I was 10 or 11. This one and the second one had just come out, and my parents got them for me for Christmas. And I liked them.
Did you pick them out because of the cover?
The cover, but I think also there was some blurb comparing them to Lord of the Rings, which I just read and was very much into in the way only a 10-year-old who's just read Lord of the Rings can be.
Aren't there characters in this named Matt and Pippin?
Matt and Perrin but yeah, I think there are lots of little homages. They're not well hidden.
It's interesting how they've had to crop this to make
Yeah.
the characters bigger. It still looks good though. Still looks nice.
It does, but it's really very different actually. And now there's some awkwardness with the guy. Rand on the left hand side.
Yeah, he looks like he can't decide whether he should still be back on the spot.
He's photobombing them.
No, to me it looks like, damn, there she goes with the guy she told me not to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
So, in terms of seeing how a composition plays around, like how you design a book cover, to function as a book cover, could we look at the last craziest one?
Yes. So, like, I think this this painting is really successful, and it looks really successful also when you add the text over the top of it. Look at how the graphic designer who designed this picked up on the kind of gold and red that's elsewhere in the painting. It looks really nice.
Yeah,
it looks really
Space
nice
around
with the
the
moon. The moon looks really great. But they're not all good. And here's another one, also for the Wheel of Time series. And if I can, there we go.
Yeah. Wow. So here's the thing. Who did you say this looked like?
What
It was the
fighter.
other painting.
It was the other one that we didn't put in the slideshow.
But I think
you know what? Here I'll come back later and I'll magically make it appear here. The one that looks like Paul Delvaux painting.
I think this.
I don't know which one. I don't know which one.
We'll have to show you later.
The other one where the guy is standing in the center holding something up.
No, there's a different painting that is also bad and also a Wheel of Time cover.
Yeah.
You'll just have to watch the podcast when it comes out later. I'll put it on the screen.
Look forward to the surprise.
But I do think, even though the color palette and everything is not Paul Delvaux, I think the uncanny positioning of all elements is kind of like Paul Delvaux.
The spine on this one would have been broken. It would have centered on that little floating face.
Yeah,
there.
that's what it's doing there.
Yeah, so the front cover was guy with the sword and his two friends staring on from the side of the page.
I do love the floating face.
Yeah.
It's awesome. That is the worst, dorkiest outfit
Which one?
that the guy, the sword guy, is wearing.
Well, yeah, you can't.
It's-
It was maybe just how people dressed at the time.
It's very not good.
Well, I think you mentioned Errol Flynn, Horace, and I like
This
that.
is less of it. This is more. The two of them at least.
This
less
is
of
like
ruffs,
Tudor.
less of- ruffled collars and lace. Regency is that?
No, Regency is much later.
But you still got your friend who's a barbarian who looks like he's from Minnesota with a headband.
Yeah.
Is that what people from Minnesota look like?
He looks like if Bruce Springsteen had to do the plot of Hatchet,
He's kind of got a mullet, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which I
No.
believe the historic Gauls actually had.
And I believe
really?
that historically mullets
That's
hadn't
cool.
might not have quite gone out of style when this was published.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
1990, yeah. Might have
Yeah.
still been mullet period
Yeah,
I mean,
outside of hockey.
it's not
civilization in the front, barbarism in the back. You'd think barbarism would mean having your hair cut, but it's the opposite.
Also, the guy, if you look one guy back from Mullet Guy, a second figure posed almost exactly the same as the first figure. If you look at their two profiles, you can basically not tell them apart, which is eerie if you think about it. But his outfit, if at a glance, it looks more like he's wearing just a Victorian suit coat, and also that's what his haircut looks like.
Yeah. Well, fantasy is always like this to different degrees, that it's sort of just a mishmash of different ideas. I think what's special about this stuff, and that I really do have a soft spot for, is that I feel like you could trace any number of influences, but like the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings, I think we're big on homogenizing what this stuff looked like. And before that, things were a little sillier, a little more costumey, a little more it's also just that maybe that it was like, the 70s and 80s, and so just tastes were different.
Speaking of Lord of the Rings art before the Peter Jackson Alan Lee canonization, we have some great stuff
Here we
coming
go.
up.
Yeah.
Is that our segue? Did I do that?
Great
Nice
segue.
Great
So
work.
this, another one personally relevant to me, and I didn't realize till my last couple of years that it was the same artist. Before I came across the...
Horace,
Excuse me.
you're getting late.
Horace, are you late?
No,
Horace.
I'm fine.
Okay.
It was to make sure I'm here with you.
Wow.
When I first read Lord of the Rings as a young sock, before I read Wheel of Time, before I read Lord of the Rings, I saw The Hobbit on TV, the old Rankin Bass animation from the 70s. Absolutely beautiful. And that might even be worth doing if you decide to venture into animation at some point. Then a few months later, I found this book in my 4th grade classroom titled The Hobbit. Oh, you wanted to ask if people would know what it was.
Yeah.
Well, there's a wizard, there are some dwarves, there's a big bird. So this is the Bilbo and the dwarves on the east side of the Misty Mountains. I saw this cover, and I didn't remember the details of the movie, but I was, wow, look at this. Look at that giant bird.
I think
whatever's going on here.
if you didn't know, if you'd never been exposed to Tolkien and you saw this book cover and it was called The Hobbit, you would think that the giant bird was called a hobbit.
You've said that before. Good point. I agree, yes.
I think it's a nice painted eagle, although it's kind of foreshortened in a crazy way.
Yeah, it's got a good energy.
His goldenness is very well rendered, although it's super flat, I think. Here's what's going on with this eagle. Every surface of eagle just about is painted with the exact same amount of detail. Parts of him are darker, but he's equally defined all the way over.
Once again, Darrell Sweet looks at Fantasyland through a long telescope.
Yeah, it's he does, I think, have a really sensitive eye for just nature. Like the nest of twigs looks good. Even the mountainside looks really nice. Those are the standouts to me in all of the work I've seen. I think he has a very well realized sense of depicting the actual natural world.
I believe he uses the same mountainside for Frodo and Sam climbing up Mount Doom in sight of Barad-dûr.
Yeah.
He great detail to natural textures. He draws trees well too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have a good tree among his paintings here, but he does like that. And we see more Robin Hood costumes with the dwarves here.
Yeah. I think you kind of lose Gandalf in the paint. He doesn't kind of pop out as much as you might want him to, but his outfit looks good. This is your standard, blue-gray Gandalf outfit. Got his nice sword there.
Bilbo, all Hobbit depictions throughout time have struggled with Bilbo. As with a lot of things, I think Peter Jackson gets it the closest in the original ones, not the fucking Martin Freeman one. But Bilbo looks dreadful in these illustrations. I'm sorry. I
agree. I find him completely unconvincing as a hobbit based on everything in the book about a stout, middle-aged man of great comfort and luxury being forced into an adventure. This looks, I don't know. Brought them to that nest. They didn't fall into it and then have as the pointing suggests, all terrified by the owner coming home. No, the eagle rescued them from burning trees and dropped them off here. Maybe they didn't realize it was an eagle.
Was he a friend of theirs?
Yeah, always a friend of
the
wizard, the wizard Gandalf.
Okay.
Yeah, the eagles are good guys.
Gwaihir the Windlord, the chief of the Eagles of the Misty Mountains.
Okay, because that's funny, because I had assumed from looking at this page that this was an adventure where an eagle landed on the nest that they'd fallen into.
The eagle has just done them a huge favor in this.
The eagle and a couple of its compatriots not pictured.
Maybe they're just scared of heights.
It does stand to reason for underground dwellers.
Sometimes, I don't know, maybe I always read the stuff that I'm drawing a picture of.
Mr. Sweet was not notorious for reading the things that he drew.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No.
What was going on with that sword guy holding this sword up?
Well, that's more or less a scene that he wasn't holding up. He was taking from in the air. The other in that scene were doing very funny things also in the castle. But his friends gave him a little cameo in there.
Yeah.
It's symbolic, Sometimes, Joe, what you see in the painting doesn't directly represent the way things happen. It just evokes feeling. Symbolic.
Any sense in this has a naturally silly sensibility about this stuff. It does none of what I've seen seems solemn. It all seems kind of like campy and fun. And this one is silly, but it's silly in such an energetic way, and there's still like mood. It still seems exciting.
The only thing that's, well, compositionally, the way that those orcs are packed into, especially if you look where at the width of the path between the rails of that bridge, it's clearly wide enough for one person barely. So it's not clear how the others are packed in there in the back, but it sure looks like a big force of guys smashing into your building, and it's exciting. And I like the way that this is big explosion from the center of the picture. Even the bridge contributing to that dynamic of.
Yeah, everything's shooting out from the middle. There is a little composition trouble, which I wonder again if this is to accommodate some kind of superimposed text of the wall on the right hand side just being like a big blotch that doesn't really interact with anything else. But I'm not too worried about it. I think you mentioned, Horace, that even though the rocks are like in the fiction, the rocks are falling on the orcs, because of the way it's illustrated, they look like they're sort of exploding outward, just in exuberance. I love that.
I don't believe that orcs would have such colorful shields myself.
Yeah.
But that may be an artifact of, well, this earlier Tolkien illustration that was much more colorful overall. Yeah. This is probably the grimmest that Sweet's many Tolkien illustrations ever got.
Yeah. If you want to see some pretty bad paintings of Gandalf, go ahead and Google this guy's paintings of Gandalf. There's some real stinkers in there. We're showing you the good stuff because it's fun to look at good art.
Looking at Aragorn in those pictures makes me think of that delusion where you think where you think someone you love has been replaced by an imposter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's true.
This
it's
one
so
though,
true.
you have the detail of like the mist that frames everything, which again like centers but then provides texture. You've got that impossible perspective on the bridge that's so exciting to look at.
Yeah. Like again, the background, the landscape is really beautiful.
Yeah.
It seems to be happening at a specific time of day, which I always love. This sort of like you said, the mistiness, the light, it's really, really cool and interesting and beautiful. And the fact, like where he tends to fall apart is anytime that there's a figure in the composition, it gets really shaky. Like even these guys who are falling from the bridge, they're kind of like, they're kind of ridiculous. And it's, if he can draw a guy that's totally wearing armor and you can't really see his face, that seems to work a little bit better. It's interesting to me because he's obviously very, accomplished at rendering, buildings, mountains, mists. But you get to the human figure and it just kind of gets kind of muddy and limp. Humans
are puzzling, difficult creatures.
Yeah, that's true.
One thing, he, and I'm not alone in this, Mr. Sweet, I guess he shaped the conceptions of fantasy, for good or for ill, of a solid generation or two of young people, I think largely under the impetus of Darrell books.
Frank Frazetta, I'd say.
Well, Frazetta was earlier and did a lot better books. But this is, Sweet did, that generation of...
Horace, yes. I need to see a Darrell Sweet Conan cover.
Oh.
I need it to exist. I need it to be real, and I want to look at it.
Here's the thing that's interesting to compare here is that Frazetta is like his anatomy is like faultless, and his stuff is super sexy. And this is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
None of the things I would not want to see this man try to draw a sexy picture.
I think he obliged you in not doing so.
Yes. But it is an interesting thing about the sort of course of fantasy writing too, which is this movement from it's like it's crazy, it's dark, people are like doing mean, evil stuff, and there's a lady and she's not wearing a lot of clothes.
Yeah.
And into, the literature, in a way, like via Tolkien, I guess, like became more and more sort of something you could read to your kids.
Del Books started publishing a lot of sort of formulaic fantasy from the 70s onward. The standard farm boy prophesies to save the world. That Robert Jordan, David Eddings, Terry Brooks, a pile of others fall into lengthy young adult fantasy series that fit that colorful look. But I do think there is something that Sweet does really well here in capturing especially the color range, the way he draws creatures, not necessarily believable or anatomically useful, but in a way that conveys exactly to the 10, 11-year-old mind, yes, this is magic. Something of the aesthetic of the movie Legend, maybe not the best fantasy ever done, but capturing a lot of what you expect of fantasy, what draws you in at a certain age, maybe?
Why is there always a prophecy about you? Because it seems like it's a bad move in a narrative, because if it's like, well, you're telling your readers that everything's going to work out okay and this is the guy that's going to save the world, and then you've completely removed any sort of sense of like, I don't know what's going to happen at the end.
Would you like to hear my metaphysical theory of this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we tend to, under the influence of science, to think of the past and the future as a line drawn through the present. But here's another way of thinking of them. There's what's already done, that's in the past, but also some stuff in the future that you can't change, and there's what you're going to do. There's the space of action. And the space of action, from the point of view of the person acting, you don't know what's going to happen. The outcome of your action is, from your point of view, undecided. And what prophecy does, what fantasy does, is it takes the future and it puts it under order. It makes it like the past. It makes it something that has rules and that is already fixed. And that provides a kind of reassurance. We want to think of fantasy as opening up possibilities, but really one thing that's often going on is taking the space of possibility and putting it under rules. Very few fantasy novels don't have rules for how magic works. And you could also say that, doesn't that take away the magic once you have rules for how you cast a spell? And D&D even doesn't feel strange the way what's a good fantastical strange, the way Kafka turning into a bug feels strange.
Good example.
And the flip side of this, of course, is that in science fiction, you take the fixed, the past, and you bring it under the domain of freedom. You have time travel stories where you go back and you change what can't be changed. You have parallel worlds where the things that are already fixed turn out not to be fixed. And so you could think of science fiction as bringing the domain of the past into the domain of action. That's what I think. That's my metaphysics.
This is
I'll
very
write a book on it.
interesting. This is so. While we ostensibly fantasy is about, wow, anything can happen, magic, whatever. You're totally free to explore. It's actually about creating a world that is more orderly, more narrative driven than one experiencing life.
It often falls into that.
Yeah. That's why you open it up. Your book starts with a big drawn-on map. Here's
Yes,
the world.
the
It's
map.
comprehensible.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
The ubiquitous map.
Yeah. But
And this is a great thing that Tolkien did well. His maps are always part of the story. If you wonder what's off in the land of Rune or Rovanian off to the east of the maps and it's all blank, and of course you want to know what's there, but you shouldn't. He chose to leave that blank because that's what maps look like when they're drawn by somebody in the real world where you don't know what's beyond there. All that you know is that the stars are strange and the blue wizards went there and never came back. That's great.
Do you think there was a light blue wizard and a dark blue wizard?
There should be.
Okay.
Yeah. Or what's
It'd be embarrassing if they were both the same shade of blue.
Russian, I believe. Am I thinking Russian has two words for Italian? Maybe both. Have two words for blue the way we have red and pink. And they have a word for dark blue and a word for light blue, and they think of them as different colors. So yeah, that might be. There could be there could also be, the cerulean wizard and the navy wizard.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The sensible navy wizard. Well, aren't the other ones? We say they're different colors, but they're all
There's-
neutrals.
Those are just
White, gray, and brown.
White, gray, brown, and 2 blue.
It might just be that those were the favorite colors of the Maya. They're just the clothes they put on. You don't decide to be a blue wizard. You're a wizard, and you just put some clothes on. You bring a small valise across the sea with you, and
Yeah.
you only have one wizard robe.
I only packed my jeans and my jean jacket.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now
you're the
everyone's
blue-
gonna
you're
call
the
me the
blue
blue
wizard.
wizard.
Nobody said they were robes.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It's time that it's time to re-examine what we think Tolkien's world looks like and put more blue jeans in.
Yeah.
It's time.
It is time, and I think we had a different way we were gonna lead this out, but I wanted to take Horace's note as an affirmation that while this stuff can be designed to comfort and there's nothing wrong with it, we'd like to encourage you to use it as a springboard to think about novel ideas and really embrace the mysterious and the sublime.
Yeah, like they do in Megalopolis, the craziest movie I maybe ever saw.
Agreed.
Not
Take your word
good.
for it.
But pretty crazy.
I would not call it not good. I
It's-
think it does very much of what it aims at, and it aims at so much. Very silly though.
Yeah, it's extremely silly. Well,
Viewers, write in with what you thought of Megalopolis
yeah, we want to know.
and what you think of Darrell Sweet. And until next time, Horace, do you want to say the catchphrase?
Go
Keep
for it.
on dreaming.